Sit down.
Press the record button, Barry.
No, get down.
I had a very interesting intervention this morning of 3 guinea pigs in my Father Christmas session.
Right.
Do you speak guinea pig?
They were very noisy.
Mm.
Ones.
It was only part of their menagerie, I think, 5 really.
I know. I was disappointed not to see the pig.
No, there's 2 pigs.
Yeah.
Richard, are you banned from Ethiopia now? I've just seen the ticket coming up with Hong Kong and Argentina are both banning everybody from Britain as well now.
Well, we've effectively been banned for a long time because they have a rule that if you go there, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks in a government-appointed hotel in Addis at your own expense.
Oh, that's
so effectively that means not going really, because and then so if I was to go to Gondar for a week, I'd have to do 2 weeks in Addis, then get up to Gondar, and at the moment you can't do that because there are no aeroplanes, and then quarantine again for a week when you get back. So it's really simply not been viable. One day it'll change.
sounds like a good racket. I mean, presumably the Americans are going to do this with Trump's hotel or something.
Probably, I think everybody's doing it.
Stay there at £800, $800 a night.
It's the same in the UK. My nephew's just been over from San Francisco for business, and he had to be 10 days in quarantine on his own, and also pay for the tests that he had to have himself. Luckily, he passed, and that was got away just before this latest.
Hello, Julian. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Tony. Good. And you?
Yes, thanks. I know I'm supposed to have heard this talk before, but the last time I'd had rather a few to drink, so I'll listen to it very soberly this time.
Tony, you've just been elected to do the vote of thanks.
It is rather longer than the last one.
Oh, right, okay.
So lock the doors.
Afternoon, Chris.
Afternoon.
Hi, Mark.
Reporting for duty.
Hi, Tony.
I'm a president.
Okay, we'll make a start. I'm just going to mute everybody. Okay, I have muted everybody, but you're able to unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask a question a bit later on, or involve yourself in the chat. So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Rotary Club of Leicester on the 21st of December 2020. Do we have any new members or visiting Rotarians with us today? I can't see any. Okay, do we have any greetings from other clubs? Okay. Just going to quickly update you all on some of the good work we've been doing as a club recently. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that. So that's the diagram which I've been promoting to everybody, just to kind of give you a feel for the way in which we're progressing with our initiatives this year. And as I mentioned before, it's very much a positive feedback loop with one supporting the other. So let me start with the fundraising. That's gone very well. We've been quite fortunate with some very generous donations from members in the last couple of weeks. And we're now up to, I believe, around 11,000, if not a bit more. We've been fortunate with some support from these guys who I hadn't come across before. Can everybody see that? I've just switched screen. I don't know if yes. Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, that has worked. So that's Richard Blackburn. He's a professor at the Leicester University in the chemistry department. And they've done a fantastic job in raising £1,000 from 34 different supporters. in a very short space of time. I've written to him this morning to thank him personally. And I'd also like to try and get on the phone with him and see if we can look at other things we could do with universities. I think we've got a very much an untapped resource there in terms of talented people who can get involved in volunteering, fundraising, all sorts of other things. So as we've also seen with the Rotary Club, there are many people locally at the universities who'd love to and are very much able and interested in supporting us in what we're doing, and we can support them back. So that was really nice to see, and I'm very pleased that they've chosen Rotary for food banks, and they've raised as much money as they have. So that's that. And then the hampers have gone really well. Scott's done a fantastic job there. I believe over 60, probably 70 now, hampers have gone out to our 5 food banks. So again, wonderful job, Scott, and to all the members who have contributed in various ways. I'd like to thank you all, and please continue. The food banks are very keen to receive as much help as we can give them. Clive's done a fantastic job as well with our online Santa appeal. I'm just going to quickly show you some of his good work. Can everybody see the Santa on there? Okay, I'm going to just play that. Hopefully the sound works.
And I bet there's a boss one. Is there, or are they all just friends?
They're all in the same field, but I don't know if they like each other.
Normally one is the boss, but you don't know which one's the boss.
Yeah, I think Zoe is the boss because she is the biggest one.
Hmm.
And then there used to be a baby horse in the field and we called him Brownie, and we used to see him all the time. But then I think it was a few months from now, he's disappeared. We can't see him anymore, so he's not anywhere in the field.
At the moment, the fields are very wet, aren't they? I bet there's a lot of mud around, is there?
So that's just fantastic from Clive, and congratulations, well done. We've managed to do 9 sessions with children from all over the county, actually all over the country, and we've raised £180, so minus fees, about £165 towards the food bank appeal, and it just went seamlessly. And I thought Clive did a very good job keeping the children engaged and interested. So I've had great feedback, and I think that's something, if we can, it'd be nice to continue that and perhaps grow it in the following years. And it's just nice, and people seem to really like it, so it worked. Okay, on the Morrison's food deliveries, so going back to the diagram, the next part is really getting the food to the food banks. I've just called John again, John Cavey from Rotary for Food Banks this morning, just to get that underway. I think it'd be nice if early in the year we could start getting some deliveries to the food banks. And as I mentioned before, Morrison's is the food partner in this scheme, and they will be providing, sourcing the food and also delivering it, which is ideal for us. On the other projects, Rotary Club, I'm just going to show you all. Can you see the certificate there? Hopefully you can. Yes, so that's all finished now. We've got a new Rotary Club that we're supporting called the Rotary Club of Leicester Universities, established 4th of December 2020, and that's their certificate. So I was very pleased to see that. And the president of that Rotary Club, Beatrice, a Portuguese student studying at De Montfort University. She's studying politics. She is a 2nd-year student. She's very impressive. She's done a fantastic job with various things that I've been doing with her in terms of, we've done the hamper appeal together, a couple of food deliveries. Very impressive young lady. She's managed to bring together 17 of her friends into an online group. So there's at least 15 students ready to go with this club and get involved in volunteering next year. So I've been really pleased with that, and I hope to support them and get them involved in the things that we'd like to, we've got lined up for next year, and hopefully they can get their own projects underway as well and start to build a bit of independence. So it's been fantastic, that, and I think we'll really enjoy as a club watching them flourish and do great things. Okay, Diana, I wonder if Diana's here. I don't think she is, but I'll just quickly mention she's looking to celebrate our club's birthday next year by supporting a local school maybe doing some work in the garden and creating something that children can enjoy, that us Rotarians can get together and contribute towards. So I spoke to Clive this morning about a school that he's involved with in Netherhall, a special needs school. So that's something we're working on, perhaps putting together for February next year. So when I get an update from Dana, I will update you all. Again, Simon's done a fantastic job with the bridge evenings. I believe there's one tomorrow. Is there, Simon? Yes, we're just putting one on tomorrow. So if anybody wants to join, that's at 7:30 in the evenings. So overall, I'd just like to say that given the various difficulties this year in getting things done, and with the lockdown and not being able to meet and all the other restrictions and difficulties we've had, I think we've done a pretty reasonable job, and we seem to have some good momentum here in various initiatives that we can continue to build next year. So thank you all, to all the members and to council for supporting me, and for all your encouragement, and look forward to working with you further next year. So do we have any notices from the secretary, Barry?
I do. I just wanted to mention the email I circulated last week, which was a request from the district for volunteers to assist with the testing of pupils in schools in January. I've not been overwhelmed with responses, which didn't really surprise me. I've had one absolutely definite no from somebody who thought it was a very poor idea, and one tentative yes. So I just wonder if anybody else has interest in volunteering.
Okay, so the process would be they could email you, Barry?
They simply give me their name by the end of tomorrow.
Okay. Any other notices?
No, that's it. I can
Nick.
tell what sort of response I'm going to get by the faces on my screen at the moment.
Well, Nick looks like he's got his hand up. Is it for this, or?
No, God, no. Get myself surrounded by a lot of infected children. No, thank you very much. No, I just wanted to make a further mention regarding the Rotary Club, in that Hule, who joined us last week, is the PhD student from De Montfort, and is going to, she's already had contact with Beatrice, so I know that that's running smoothly. But she has Rotary experience from when she was at school at home in Nigeria, so I think she's going to help that Rotary Club enormously in terms of understanding how to go forward. So I think things are looking good.
Yes, and thank you very much for all your hard work, Nick. You've done a fantastic job with that. Getting it up and over the line. I know we had a bit of difficulties in the beginning. We had a different president and that didn't work out. So we managed to get somebody else in place. So well done. Okay, I've got a couple of mentions here. Yes, Scott, I'll send you the information. And Richard just mentioned that, Richard said, yeah. So Richard and Trish plan to walk the Rutland Round, which is 5 times circa 20K. So that's 100K, is it, Richard? Okay, fantastic. Week beginning Jan 18th. If anyone would like to join us for all or part, yeah, I would be interested. It's not a nighttime thing, is it? Because I know Trish does running in the nighttime. I'm not sure I'd fancy that.
No. It's 5 over 5 days. There's actually a little book. It's a bit like the Leicester run, but just shorter. And each leg is about 20K. And we'd aim to get it in daylight, obviously. But it will become hell or high water, and bear in mind it is January, so we've both taken a week off to do it. In lieu of
Richard, you can only do it if you live in tier 2, presumably.
No, because you're outside. It's outside exercise, so that's perfectly acceptable.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely acceptable. Obviously, you're not going into any indoor exercise. So the rules are you can exercise anywhere you like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. Thought you weren't allowed to leave your tier. All right.
No. As long as that's if you're going to go, to join other people inside or or
Yeah.
above, but not if you're taking exercise.
All right, thank you for that.
Scott's already said he'd like to do a small part of that. So yeah, put me and Scott down if anybody else would like to join.
I'll send you joining instructions.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Any other notices from committee chairman? No? Okay, fantastic. We can move on to our speaker. Julian's still with us? Yes, okay, great. Yeah, that's always good to see. I do have to check that first, you never know with Zoom. So, Professor Julian Ellis, OBE, Chair of Nottingham Prison Independent Monitoring Board, is also a chartered textile technologist who has spent almost all of his career in textile research and development, usually making textile machines do things they were never designed to do. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. He set up his own business in 1981 to make a commercially successful artificial ligament for knee repairs, and has been working on textile, orthopedic and vascular repair systems ever since. He was an honorary professor in the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Nottingham. Julian is chairman of trustees at the Framework Knitters Museum in Nottingham and is upper warden of the Worshipful Company of Framework Knitters. Our club has always had close links with the Framework Knitters Livery Company. The upper warden will chair the company in 2021, to be followed by the present junior warden, our very own Tony Jarvis, in 2022. Also, while among other club members, Derek Kolb is the company's chaplain. So nice to see plenty of links there between us. So looking forward to your talk. So thank you for joining us, Julian, and please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. This is based on or developed from a talk I gave to the Framework Knitters some time ago, but I did think it was entirely appropriate to talk about lockdowns at this time. My first experience of practical lockdowns was when I was 7 years old, and I was on holiday with my parents and sister on the Isle of Wight. We were discussing what to do that afternoon, and I looked at a map of the island and I came across a place in Parkhurst labelled HM Prison and suggested we went there. I had no idea at that time that people were actually put in prison in the 1950s, but I did rapidly learn when my parents responded with shock and amusement. Needless to say, it was a major ambition for the future to look inside, having been told I couldn't. In 1970 and 71, I was teaching in a bush school in rural Uganda while on VSO. On a visit to Kampala one day, I picked up and bought a penguin book called Coup d'etat, a practical handbook. After completing reading it, I said to my wife that I thought that Uganda was absolutely ripe for a coup. And true enough, 3 months later, on February the 25th, 1971, we awoke and, as usual, turned on the BBC World Service, the news at 7 a.m. and heard there'd been the sound of prolonged gunfire in Kampala overnight. And the book had instructed coup leaders to take over the radio station and broadcast military music until they were ready to confirm the change of government. On switching to Radio Uganda, sure enough, there was military music playing, and subsequently we learned that Idi Amin had seized power from Milton Obote, and he'd followed the guidance from the book. I've still got that book in case my plans to overthrow the government come to fruition. And all over the country, there was a lockdown with a curfew imposed from 6 p.m, but it didn't affect those of us out in the bush, but primarily those in town. Early one evening in a rugby club in Kampala, there was a drinking session going on when somebody said, "Let's play curfew chicken." What's that? First one to leave's chicken. Members of the group became increasingly uncomfortable as 6 o'clock approached and then passed, and there was much looking at watches. Then somebody said, "When are you guys going home? There's a curfew on, you know." "I thought we were playing curfew chicken." "I know, but we're all doctors, so we've got curfew passes." Fortunately, all but one got home satisfactorily. He was left outside a police station, and when the police car drove off, he just walked home. The memory of Parkhurst lingered on, and one night in the pub with an old friend, he told me he was on what used to be the Board of Visitors and is now called the Independent Monitoring Board of Her Majesty's Prison, Nottingham. I was very interested. He told me more. And to cut a long story short, I joined in 1987 and stayed for just over 22 years. Every prison in England and Wales must have an IMB, as they're known, and members have the right of entry to the museum at any time and can talk to prisoners out of the sight and hearing of a prison officer. And they must also report to the Ministry of Justice at least annually and at any time over matters of concern. Since you don't get paid, you're unfettered by the prospect of losing income, so it makes one pretty well unsackable, and you can speak of things as you see them, as long as security and privacy is observed. And in due course, I became chairman of the National Association of Members of Independent Monitoring Boards and a member of the National Training Team for board members. And this gave me invitations and access to lots of prisons. I learned much about locking up people. And Lockup at that time a properly funded and well-run system. But it didn't prevent me from speaking out about problems and injustices, of course. And there were still many injustices. Letters in the Times helped solve some of them. And I'm proud to say that that almost always worked. And the most notable I wrote about was the policy of holding life sentence prisoners indefinitely if they refused to accept their guilt. This, of course, was unjust because there are unquestionably a small number of miscarriages of justice. My day job meant that I often acted as an expert witness in both criminal and civil cases. And on one occasion, I was expert witness evidence reviewer for the Criminal Cases Review Committee in the Commission in the case of a man given a life sentence for rape. His alleged victim was under suspicion for making a false statement about another rape lots of years later, which is why the case was referred back to the Commission. In the case I reviewed, I uncovered evidence relating to clothing that nobody had spotted, which meant he couldn't have committed the offence as the so-called victim had described. And he'd served 14 years for a crime which he'd certainly not committed and was duly released. As part of my national duties, I visited more than 50 prisons, including 3 in Russia, during a week-long visit in 2002, as part of a delegation of 4 to talk to their Select Affairs Committee about how we organise prison monitoring in Britain. It was their ambition to copy the British system. The visit was, to say the very least, memorable. Even standing in Red Square was amazing at that time, let alone going to the Duma, the Russian Parliament, and having a meeting with their Minister of Prisons, as well as the prison visits, and getting to understand the dreadful conditions under which many prisoners were held, despite the compassion of those actually running prisons. Prisons are fascinating places, as are those held within. I mean, when you meet arsonists, murderers, and child molesters regularly and know about it. The most accurate portrayal of life in a prison is always said to be porridge with Ronnie Barker. And indeed, there's almost always humour and laughter inside, wind-ups being a very common pastime. But the atmosphere changes very significantly during serious incidents such as hostage takings and disturbances. And board members are always called in as independent witnesses to safeguard everybody from false allegations. One time at Belmarsh Prison, a notorious prisoner who's very large and extremely strong never appeared of swearing at a woman, but he grabbed another inmate who'd sworn at a female officer and threw him into a cell shared by 2 aircraft hijackers. In the course of negotiations, the hostage taker asked for £2 million, a helicopter out of there, a cheese sandwich, some ice cream, and an axe. I'd like an axe. Eventually, when he was talked out, and while being escorted down to the segregation unit, he turned to my board member friend and said, "That will teach the bastards to hijack airplanes." One of the things I discovered about attending serious incidents is that to disperse the adrenaline when one gets home, gin and tonic's very effective. There was one prisoner I had a chat with, who was having a chat with, who told me he got 15 years minimum life sentence for the murder of his wife, which was rather longer than usual at that time because the judge thought he murdered her for her money. He said it wasn't true. He killed her because she was a miserable old cow and he hated her. And another complained to us that he wasn't allowed to practice his religion. When asked what it involved, he said that he needed to spend all day meditating in his cell. It was one way of getting out of work. Unfortunately, it didn't work with anybody. But not all prisoners are fully appreciative of the fact that we were there for their welfare. Sex and travel are not infrequent suggestions. I attended an incident as the independent observer when 2 prisoners took a hostage and barricaded their cell door. Prison doors open inwards. These 2 gentlemen were very violent individuals and threatened further violence. What they didn't know was that many prison doors can be made to open outwards with the removal of the screws around the rim of the door. Some noisy machinery was operated on the ground below their cell window, as the screws operating the frame in position were removed very quietly, and the doors opened easily, much to the surprise of the hostage takers. Then the barricade had to be pulled apart by a team trained in such matters while being protected by officers with large shields. I was witness to this from a safe distance and also went to visit the prisoners in the segregation unit when they calmed down. There was a court case on one of them about the incident and related matters some months later. When I gave my evidence, the accused strongly denied he'd ever seen me. I was able to show my notes made at the time, proving I had. When the jury found him guilty, the judge gave him an extra 6 months for denying the presence of somebody there to protect him. Board members can attend the last day of one of the 2 prison training centres courses where they run courses for prison officers to deal with riots and where they have bricks thrown at them by the instructors and are attacked with all sorts of things like scaffold poles. They practice dealing with petrol bombs being thrown at them and how to enter and clear a whole prison wing that's been set up with lots of barricades and filled with weapons for the instructors. Standing at a safe distance to observe makes for a very exciting day. And within your own prison, hostage takings and other incidents are practiced too. The instructors doing their role playing by behaving very nastily. A friend volunteered to be the hostage, thinking it would be fun, but she became very frightened as he acted so well and entered into his role so effectively. Boards used to carry out disciplinary adjudications, and we had the power to extend sentences for up to 6 months. They were often fascinating, especially when somebody had been on the run after absconding. Somebody who absconded and been on the run for 6 months and eventually recaptured came before us. The panel asked him how he'd survived for 6 months without being able to draw benefits. He said, "Oh, easy. I've got a suit and a briefcase, and all I do is turn up a small cash-based business and say I'm from the VAT office and doing an unannounced inspection." He'd ask for the books and then sit there for 20 minutes with a piece of paper and make notes. Then he called the business owner over and said, "You know you're on the fiddle, and I know you're on the fiddle, and I can prove it. Give me 100 quid now and we'll say no more about it." He said it worked a treat every time. Another said that while he'd been out, he'd been to the cinema to see the film Dirty Dancing 8 times. I think he must have thought it's quite a good film. Some prisoners are very strange and others very sociable. Harry Roberts, who you may recall was involved in the murder of 3 London policemen in August 1966, was at Nottingham for a time. I got on with him very well, for example, but Reggie Cray never talked to anybody. But one day, Reggie had a large parcel sent in. It contains T-shirts with the words 30 years was enough printed on them. The deputy governor sent for him and told him he couldn't possibly have those T-shirts. Reggie asked to look at them. He said, "Okay, send them back." They've only been sent to me by my business manager for approval. Protests by individuals, very often a hunger strike is quite common. They usually last from just after lunch till before tea. Young men get quite hungry. Morton Hall Prison in Lincolnshire used to be an open prison. The governor was very proud of the lawn outside his office window, and the word got round to prisoners on garden duty. Some of them went into the woods there and got some soil and sifted it very fine. Then one evening before lockdown, they made some simulated molehills on the lawn outside the governor's office. Next morning, the governor went nuts when he saw the molehills and told the works department to sort it out. They made a lot of mess digging up the lawn looking for non-existent moles. Needless to say, the prisoners observed all this with great delight. When he was prison's ombudsman, Stephen Shaw received a complaint from a prisoner in an open prison. The prisoner was found with a bottle of gin in the prison grounds early one evening before lockdown. He was punished for it by loss of privileges and complained that he was being treated very unfairly because he had found the bottle and was taking it to the office to hand it in. When Stephen looked into it, the story fell apart. A stash of tonic had been found in his room. I was about to leave Gartree Young Offenders Institution on one occasion when we were locked down. A careless contractor had left a ladder against the outside wall when he went off to lunch. A young offender being taken back to his room for his meal made short work of climbing it and hightailing it out of the area. We stayed locked down where no movement is allowed anywhere within the prison, and nobody comes in or out until the situation is clarified and a roll call taken. Of course, Parva Prison is being rebuilt at the moment. At Ranby Prison, a Category C prison with just a fence around the perimeter, I stopped to speak to a young man in a wheelchair with his leg in plaster. I asked him what had happened. He said, "I fell 17 feet 6 inches. How do you know exactly? Well, that's the height of the perimeter fence. I was trying to do a runner, but fell from the top. The way to get up a fence like that is you find some nails, you put them in the toes of your trainers, and then you use those to climb up the fence. You can, they latch onto the wire. When I was on part of the parole board, I had to discuss their case with prisoners to help them put their application clearly. It was interesting to learn about the history of serious offenders and their plans if released. One guy was in for bigamy, serving 4 years. It was a second offence. Now, some offences are easy to repeat, I'm sure, but bigamy? Why not just get a divorce? 4 years. Another guy was serving 7 years for supplying a gun used in an armed robbery. He'd given his gun to his brother John to sell because he was skint. However, John was drinking with his pals one afternoon, his brother being elsewhere, and they rather rashly decided to go and hold up the local post office. They drove there in his car and inevitably got caught when somebody took the number. The brother I was interviewing was more than a little sore with his drunken sibling when he told the police where he'd got his gun from. I only visited Leicester Prison once. Its main distinguishing feature actually is the wall, the highest prison wall in the country. And therefore, for some time, it had a special secure unit inside it. And it was scrapped when better ones became available. The prison had been on a closure list for ages and still is, I think, as the land there is so valuable, it could be sold for as much money as a larger prison could be built somewhere else. You might remember the prison riots of April 1990, notably at Strangeways. There were disturbances at that time all around the country. I was called in at Nottingham because information was received meant that one was expected at the time of unlock when the evening meal was served. All the staff specially trained in riot control were called in and hidden, all kitted up in a nearby building. I was watching the prisoners return from the servery. One influential prisoner turned to me and said, "Chips for tea, riot's off." And it was. Some years later, there was an escape from the Special Secure Unit at Whitemoor Prison in Cambridgeshire, which is a prison within a prison. Several very serious prisoners, however, went on the run after a very well-organised escape. And I was asked onto the Today programme on Radio 4 to comment. John Humphreys asked me 4 times if I thought that the Home Secretary, Michael Howard, should resign. I was asked 4 times, and eventually I said, personally, I think he should. Thank you, Mr. Ellis, goodbye, was the end of the interview promptly. But afterwards, my phone was tapped for a couple of weeks. Now, if the police or security forces want to listen in, you won't know about it. But I knew about this because of noises on the line, and it was simply meant to intimidate. And I've come across other people that this has happened to for the same reason. I have, of course, many stories to tell over that 22-year period, but I'll close by saying that when on a trip with the University College to BAE Systems at Cowes, we did fit in a visit to Parkhurst. My colleague said it was the strangest jolly he'd ever been on, but he subsequently applied successfully to join the board at Nottingham. So I did get my look inside Parkhurst at last. So to conclude, I wish you all a very happy Christmas, and may the new year be a better one than 2020. If you've got any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Julian. Very humorous too. Very much enjoyed that. So do we have any questions from members? And if we do, could you please unmute yourself and go ahead?
Ooh.
Yes, Michael. Then we'll take Richard next.
Am I unmuted?
You are, yes.
Yeah. Most interesting. I wonder whether you have any comments on the move to the private sector control of prisons, as opposed to what it was when it was a public sector, a totally public sector organisation.
Some of them have gone very well, but some of them, well, shall we say, I joined to help out at the board at Doncaster Prison, run by Serco for 12 months. And I thought that was a disaster. I thought it was extremely badly run. I made my views known. The governor refused to talk to me, but I was very unhappy about that. But some the innovation's been quite good, but the staff aren't paid as well, they're not trained properly, and it's all been done on the cheap, or tried to do it on the cheap, and of course it worked out as more expensive. I've been pretty unhappy about the whole situation of private prisons. It's Her Majesty's prisons. They should be run by Her Majesty's direct representatives, and I don't think they should be run for commercial purposes. And that is a view that's followed by very, very many people.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Yeah, on nothing, going back to your other roles, William, your ACL reconstruction, what one is that?
Oh, it's your surgeon, are you?
Yes.
It was the Leeds KO, which has since.
Oh yeah.
You remember the Leeds KO?
I put 1 or 2 of those in many years ago.
Yes, and I've worked with Angus Wallace for many, many years.
Oh right. Oh yes. No. Angus.
So it's all particularly shoulder surgery, and we're currently working on a new idea for repairing crushed bones, particularly ribs.
Oh right. Fascinating. Excellent. Thank you.
Man of many talents. Okay, do you have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to pass it on to Tony Jarvis to say a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, President. Yeah, I thought it was an excellent talk. I wasn't expecting anything less, Julian. There were some of the jokes there you told I don't remember last time, so I must have had too much to drink, I think, previously. I especially like the one about the murder of the wife got 15 years. I thought that was quite, yes, I could see that one, actually. But no, excellent talk. I think we're doing a lot of Zoom now, aren't we? And you must be as well. for those of you who haven't visited the Rudderton Museum, when we're allowed to, I mean, presumably not open at the museum yet, are you?
Not at the moment, no.
It's well worth a visit, and Julian's in charge of that as well. So he's got plenty on his plate, and he's going to be master of the Premier Knitters in April, where hopefully things will be hopefully back to normal, and we've got the vaccine going, and this new strain vaccine works for the new strain that we're all scared to death of. But thank you very much again, Julian, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Okay, Richard, would you mind giving us an update on the COVID situation in Leicestershire, if you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, in terms of UHL, we continue on in the sort of second wave. The two aspects of it, the infection rate in the city and county sort of continues on. We are under more pressure in the hospital simply because when people get chest problems in the winter, they're always worse than in the summer. So the hospital is under a lot of pressure at the moment, and the larger part of elective work has more or less ceased. But in terms of mortality, it's about roughly half what it was back in the spring. So there's a bit of good news and a bit of bad news in that. And I think that's probably the way it's going to stay for the larger part of the winter. I think if you want best case scenario, new strain comes along, is perhaps more infectious but less dangerous than the old one. The vaccine continues to work, but they keep us banged up to be on the safe side through until Easter, and then things get better. Worst case scenario, we've got COVID-20 arrived, and we're back to square one. So that's just hope for the best. Is all I can say on that. But I think like Nottingham, I think it's in a very bad position in terms of their hospitals at the moment, worse than we are. You know, winter's always difficult in the NHS, and it's just come a bit earlier this year.
So the rate is half of what we saw in spring. How does that?
The mortality is.
Sorry, mortality, but yes. So how does that compare in terms of excess death? What is the excess deaths figure then in terms of what we'd expect at this time of year?
For November, December, it is up. I can't give you the exact percentage or numbers, but it's definitely up. I mean, we would normally expect in UHL to have roughly 50 odd deaths a week, and we're running at sort of 60, 70 at the moment. So interestingly, the sort of normal pneumonias, we're not getting as many of those, but we're getting more of the COVID ones. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any questions or comments from members? No, okay, thank you. Attendance today has been, oh yes, Nick, go ahead.
Sorry, I had something to say that doesn't bear on what Richard has to say, which is why I kept my hand down then. I just wanted to say before we left that I feel that we should all congratulate Clive for his definitive performance as Santa Claus. And I'm rather hoping that we shall see him on a stage somewhere near us in the coming months. So can I just ask everybody to give him a round of applause?
Yes, I got to see him at work, and the families were very pleased. I've had some excellent feedback, Clive. So yeah, well done. Okay, if everybody could just unmute themselves so we could all say goodbye. We have a bank holiday next week, obviously. So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. And I suppose from my end, I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, whoever you're spending the time with, and a very Happy New Year. And hopefully next year things get eased a little bit, and we can kind of go back to normal life as it used to be. So all of you stay safe and well, and I hope to see you again very shortly. Thank you very much.
See you then. Bye.
Thank you very much. Happy Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Next year.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.